Chris Dickerson makes history by being the first African-American to win the coveted AAU Mr. America title. All the details of the 1970 Mr. America contest coming up next on Bodybuilding History.
I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings,
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
All right, welcome to another episode of Bodybuilding History. I'm your host, John Hansen, from the podcast Bodybuilding Legends Podcast, and also the website bodybuildinglegendshow.com. On this episode of Bodybuilding History, we're going to talk about the 1970 AAU Mr. America contest, which was a very historic event in the history of bodybuilding because it was the first time that an African-American bodybuilder won the title of Mr. America. The Mr. America title started in 1939, and in its 32-year history, no African-American had ever won the title, despite the fact that there was a lot of great black bodybuilders who had competed in the Mr. America up until this point, including the great Harold Poole and Sergio Oliva. The 1970 AAU Mr. America took place on Sunday, June 14th, 1970, at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Culver City, California. The contest featured a total of 29 competitors, which was up significantly from a year ago. There were 7 judges on the judging panel, and Bob Christ, who was the current AAU chairman, was in charge of all the judges. The judges included Bob Parker, Ramon Garcia, Jerome Weiss, Larry Hanneman, Dave Collier, Bob Bendel, and Bob Samuels. A point system was used to judge the contest instead of a placement system, with the winner getting the highest point total. There were no height classes used, so the contest was just judged in one class. And at the time, back in 1970, the AAU was actually awarding points for personality and for athletic ability. So during the weekend, the judges would actually interview all the competitors to see what they did for a living, what kind of lifestyle they had, and they would judge these competitors on whether they would be a good representative for the title of Mr. America. The bodybuilders were also able to get an extra 5 points in the total score by proving they had some kind of athletic ability. This was usually associated with weightlifting, so the bodybuilders would have to prove that they lifted a certain amount of weight in the Olympic lifts, and then they were awarded an extra 5 points for this. The winner of the 1970 AAU Mr. America was Chris Dickerson. Chris was 30 years old at the time. Chris had been competing in competition since 1966, and he was really a great competitor. He won a lot of titles. He won the Mr. California title in 1967. His first national level title was the Mr. USA contest, which he won in 1968. And earlier in the year, before he won the Mr. America, Chris also won the Junior Mr. America title. This was Chris's 4th year competing in the Mr. America contest. In 1967, he took 6th place. And then in 1968, he jumped up to 3rd place. And then the year before, in 1969, Chris was in 2nd place to Boyer Coe, who won the title that year. So Chris was definitely the favorite going into the contest. Chris had a very proportionate muscular physique, especially his leg development, which was some of the best in the country. His calves were huge, and he had great thigh development. He was in great condition this year, and he was always an awesome poser. Chris's first mentor into bodybuilding was Bill Pearl, and in January of 1970, Chris moved back to California to train under Bill's tutelage in order to make sure that he would be in his very best condition for this year's Mr. America contest. Chris also won the Most Muscular title that year at the Mr. America. The Most Muscular was usually the award that was given to the bodybuilder who had the greatest amount of muscle mass and definition. Quite often in the Mr. America contest, the guy who won the overall Mr. America would not win the Most Muscular title. Previous African-American bodybuilders like Harold Poole and Sergio Oliva won the Most Muscular title several times, but were never given the actual title of Mr. America. So it was very impressive that Chris not only won the Mr. America, but he also won the Most Muscular title. 2nd place in the Mr. America title in 1970 was Ken Waller. Ken was from Cincinnati, Ohio. He was 28 years old. Ken was a previous Junior Mr. USA and Mr. USA winner, and he had taken 3rd place at the Mr. America the year before. So it was not surprising that the title came down to Chris Dickerson and Ken Waller for this year. Ken was one of the biggest competitors in the whole contest. He had outstanding leg development, but he also had good balance in his physique. However, Chris won the contest pretty handily with an overall score of 383 points compared to Ken's 268 points. The real surprise of the contest was Casey Viator from Louisiana. Casey, at only 18 years old, was by far one of the biggest competitors in the whole contest, and he shocked the audience with his massive size and shape. Casey really came out of nowhere because the previous year he had taken sixth place at the Teenage Mr. America. So to jump up to third place at only 18 years old in the Mr. America contest was really phenomenal. From the reports of some of the people I read who were actually there at the contest, they said the crowd was going crazy for Casey, and they would not have been disappointed if he actually would have won the title. To show you how impressive Casey was, not only did he take third place overall in the contest, but he also won the Best Back, Best Chest, and Best Arms award. In fact, Casey won more trophies than anybody else on stage that night. Casey at the time was being trained by 1969 Mr. America Boyer Coe, and Boyer had really helped Casey improve over the last year. Casey and Boyer, coincidentally, are both from Louisiana, and Casey would go on to make history himself the following year in 1971 when he won the Mr. America title at only 19 years old, the youngest person in the history of the Mr. America title to win the contest. Bill St. John from Glassboro, New Jersey was in fourth place. Bill had been competing in the Mr. America contest since 1966, so he was a real veteran in this contest. He had taken fourth place the year before in 1969, and he was hoping to move up this year, and he would have, except for the addition of Casey Viator in the contest, who pushed Bill down to fourth place again. Bill had a very thick, muscular physique, but he also had outstanding ab development. In fact, Bill had won the Best Abs Award at the Mr. America the last 2 years, and he was hoping to win Best Abs again, but unfortunately he was beat out for that award by Chuck Amato. Chuck Amato was in fifth place this year at the Mr. America. Chuck was from Milwaukee, Oregon. He had competed in the Mr. America contest 5 years earlier in 1965, but he only took 22nd place. So he had obviously really made some fantastic improvements since then. Chuck had incredible abdominal development, which is why he won the Best Abs Award. And he also had a very symmetrical, pleasing physique. Annabelle Lopez from New York City was in sixth place. Annabelle was not a big guy, only 5'5", 160 pounds, but he had outstanding shape and symmetry, and he always showed up in really good condition. So he typically did very well in these national level AAU competitions. Jim Morris from Pasadena, California was in seventh place. Jim actually won the Mr. California and the Mr. Los Angeles titles that same year. So he was starting to work his way up the ladder. And Jim would go on to win the Mr. America title in 1973, 3 years from now. This contest was really packed with a lot of future talent. I want to go down the list and give out some names of some future legendary bodybuilders who competed this year at the Mr. America contest. The first one is the great Ed Corny from Fremont, California. Ed was competing in his first AAU Mr. America contest, and he took 11th place. 1 year later, in 1971, Ed would jump all the way up to fourth place at the AAU Mr. America, but that would be his last AAU Mr. America contest because after taking fourth in 1971 at the AAU America, Ed switched over to the IFBB, and he won first place in his short class at the IFBB Mr. America. And of course, the rest is history. He went on to win the 1972 IFBB Mr. America and IFBB Mr. Universe, and was featured on the cover of the book Pumping Iron, as well as the movie Pumping Iron, as Arnold Schwarzenegger's training partner. Another great future IFBB bodybuilder was Bill Grant. Bill was right behind Ed in 12th place in this contest, and he was at the time living in Orange, New Jersey before he finally moved out to California. As I mentioned, Chris Dickerson won the coveted Most Muscular title. Ken Waller was in second place. Casey Viator was in third place. And Charles Amato was in fourth place. So it pretty much followed the same order as the Mr. America placings. Chuck Amato also won the Best Abs Award. Chris Dickerson, with his outstanding leg development, of course, won Best Legs. And Casey Viator, as I mentioned before, won Best Chest, Best Arms, and Best Back. Chris Dickerson also traveled to London that same year to compete in the NABA Mr. Universe contest, where he did win the short class over Franco Colombo. And by the end of the 1970s, Chris decided to switch over to the IFBB, where he became one of the most successful professional bodybuilders of his era. And then he culminated his career by winning the 1982 Mr. Olympia contest. So I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane for the 1970 AAU Mr. America, a contest that really was a milestone in bodybuilding history because it was the first time that an African American would go on to win the AAU Mr. America contest. And before the 1970s would wrap up, 3 more African Americans would go on to win the Mr. America title in 1973, 1977, and 1978. So be sure to check out the Bodybuilding Legends podcast every week on your favorite streaming service, and go to the website bodybuildinglegendshow.com for all our previous episodes. This is John Hansen for another episode of Bodybuilding History.